Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast with your host, Lorna Poole, sharing the secrets to creating wealth, investing, and that all-important money mindset. To find out more and accelerate your journey to financial freedom, head on over to www.lornapoole.com to get started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Financial Freedom Podcast. Would you love to know the top offshore strategies to be successful? Andrew Henderson is the founder of the Nomad Capitalist to help people increase their personal freedom and to help them improve their financial situations and intelligently diversify their lives, helping people save $280,000 a year in taxes, get a second passport in a matter of months to get started on building their business of their dreams, and give their children education opportunities they never would have achieved otherwise by citizenship, by decent programs, are all examples of work he's recently done with this mission in mind. Andrew spent the last 10 years traveling the world with the purpose of finding the best legal strategies on the ground, knowledge and works. Andrew, great to have you here.
It's my pleasure. Great to be with you.
There are many people who want to be offshore, and there's many advantages to that.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is the world has opened up in so many ways, but this is the one thing that people don't consider. I mean, I guess it's because 30 or 40 years ago, guys like the Wolf of Wall Street went and hid their money in Swiss banks. That was illegal then, still is today. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what I say, go where you're treated best, which is basically cherry picking in this big wide world, which is now wide open with the internet, cherry picking the places that treat you best.
And when you mean treat you best, are you talking about tax advantages? Are you talking about standard of living? Are you talking about where you can make money? What do you mean by that?
Well, so our business, Nomad Capitalist, I mean, we talk a lot about tax. We talk about second citizenship and stuff like that because our clientele is the 7 and 8 figure entrepreneur, and that's the pain point. But I'm saying consider it for anything. I'm saying if you're not happy with the people where you live in terms of dating, go and date people in another culture. If you're not happy with the quality of conversation, a lot of folks in the United States right now, where I was from, they're sick and tired of everything's about, are you for Trump or are you against Trump? If you don't want that, go somewhere else. Where's the cost of living lower? Where do they more identify with you? Where can you do things? Where can you make investments? Where can you, everything. And so I talk a lot about lower your taxes. I talk a lot about get a second citizenship, diversify, protect yourself, protect your wealth. But I think it can be anything.
Yeah, diversify and protect your wealth. But how does somebody who's looking into this, even figure out, the world's big.
Yep.
Countries have advantages and disadvantages. Like, how does somebody even work that out? Or how is it possible to get a second passport? People struggle for years to get it.
Well, I mean, I think you've seen why we've built a relatively successful business. Because I mean, here's what I've said, right? I mean, 30 years ago, so I'll be 35 later this year. 35 years ago, the United States was the best place to be born. Mm-hmm. West Germany, I believe, was number 2. You don't hear about West Germany much anymore. Mm-hmm. So the world has changed. And so back then, Singapore was maybe discussed as it's up and coming. Now you've got 200 countries. A lot of them are vying to get on the map. And so it is difficult. And to add insult to injury, some of the traditional offshore havens, Switzerland doesn't accept a lot of people for banking, certainly not most Americans. The British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands are more difficult to do business in these days. And so, how do you figure it out? Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer. One thing I've said is onshore is the new offshore. You want to find places that have very low taxes or have tax exemptions for people who have foreign businesses like what you have or what I have, where we do business in the world. And so, how do you get started? Well, I mean, for me, it's been 12 years of research, going to over 100 countries. I've got a full-time research and development team now. I mean, this is a lot of work, but, I can tell you most wealthy people don't cover themselves against some of the biggest risk, and that's sovereign risk. All their money is in one country and their passport is in one country, and that opens them up to a lot of risk.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember living in the States for a couple of years, and I noticed that a lot of American people never left their country.
Yep.
Perhaps where I live, like in Ireland, we love to hop around to other countries. But even in Ireland, people have not left the country, and they don't think about the consequences that could happen in your country. And, where do you go when things go wrong and you don't have anything in place?
Well, so I look at things from two perspectives. You're absolutely right, by the way. Ireland was one of the first places that I went. I love Ireland. I love, the Irish people. I think it's a great place. Obviously, the taxes there aren't really that low for everyday living if you run a business. If you're Microsoft, but
we could have a whole conversation about Irish taxes.
They're high. I mean, levies and all kinds of things. But there's two ways to look at this, right? There's the plan B, which is, I have people who, have sold businesses from 10 million up to almost $1 billion. One guy did. And I said, you know what? I mean, this is like car insurance for you. You go out, you get a second passport, you're covered. And you know what? As you said in the introduction, maybe that's a Maltese passport or a Cypriot passport, Bulgarian passport, whatever, maybe a passport through descent where now your kids or your grandkids have extra opportunities. Maybe it's something else. That's an insurance policy. You have some offshore banking. You're not trying to avoid taxes. You're not trying to do anything illegal. You're just diversifying. You're going to do everything the right way. The plan A, which is what I've done, a lot of entrepreneurs do with me, is I'm sick and tired of being in Ireland. And when I take my money out of my company, I get whacked with 40% plus tax. I'm losing a fortune. And so I want to be a plan A guy. I want to move somewhere with much lower taxes. I want to incorporate offshore. I'm going to cut my ties with Ireland. They don't own me anymore. And now over the next 10 years, I'll accumulate millions of extra dollars by not, being in Ireland or the United States or what have you. So, those are the two perspectives that I look at.
Yeah, I have a friend that she moved to the Isle of Man because of the tax, that I think I don't know. It's very low anyway compared to here, and the advantages she has gained from moving is unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I talk about is the Isle of Man, I think, is an interesting place. A lot of those kind of places have like a flat tax in some cases where, maybe you pay, $35,000 a year. And so if you make $100,000 a year, you're not really saving much, right? I mean, there's better ways to go with $100,000. But if you're making $1 million, then you might like that. Italy has a new flat tax, 100,000 euros, and you're done. As with most things in Europe, there are some caveats you have to be careful for. But, what I've also talked about is, 1996, my parents debated and ultimately decided not to move overseas. Back then, the discussion was, let's move everything we have, the cat, the dog, the house, the bank account, all that. Let's move it all over to New Zealand or to Chile. Those were the big two contenders. And let's just become everything there. And what I say is, diversify. Maybe you spend half your time in the Isle of Man, half your time in Malaysia. Your banking is in Singapore and Panama. You're investing in Cambodia, Georgia, and Colombia. You've got a passport from St. Lucia and maybe somewhere else. And, you are fully diversified.
But that is protecting yourself, right?
Well, I think it is protecting yourself. But again, I think so it comes down to plan A or plan B. I mean, do you know what protecting yourself is for me in this fragile business climate where it's been totally democratized? It's keeping every dime that you can. Because you know what? The people who are living in lower tax countries, in Eastern Europe, in parts of, Central and South America, in Asia, you know what they're doing? They're plowing their money all back into their business because their tax rate's 9%. I'm in Montenegro right now, 9% taxes for people who live here. And so that person has an unfair advantage. Now, once you have all that money, once you accumulate that extra money, I absolutely want to protect myself. I do not want to be subject to one government for my banking, my passport. I don't want them to be able just to flip the switch.
Yeah. I think this is amazing because, like having a bank somewhere else and, diversifying your investments, it's smart. It's very smart.
Well, here's what I've said, Lorna. I've said people go around and they go on, in the United States, it's Yelp. They go out for sushi. They go and look at, reviews on Yelp or some other review website, Google reviews, whatever. People put more effort into reviewing the quality of a sushi restaurant than they do into the quality of their country. I don't know about Ireland. I think people in Ireland are actually very smart. But where I come from and where many people come from, it's very serendipitous. They just happen to be born in the best country in the history of the world. Isn't that interesting how so many of us from all around the world were born into the best country on earth? And yet, in many ways, it's not objectively the case. And I think the first step is awareness. Awareness that where I'm at is not perfect.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I think a lot of people don't take the time to even acknowledge that.
No, because it's nationalistic, it's ego. It's just this ego. We all want to say we're born in the best place on earth. And the United States has some good things about it. I've been out of the United States. I gave up my U.S. citizenship. You know what? I am willing to admit now as a former U.S. person that there are things the United States does better than other countries. There's also a lot of things that they do worse than a lot of other countries. And so go and take the good parts. Don't take the bad parts. Don't take it all as one bushel basket. Go and just kind of pick things out and then put the rest somewhere else.
Yeah. And what about investing in other countries?
Well, it's interesting because, when you first look at investing in other countries, you think, oh, a lot of these deals aren't that good. I've got a full-time R&D team. We've been doing this a long time. We were just looking at deals in Bogota in Colombia. Nobody would know Colombia, the second freest economy in Latin America right now. I think it might be the first in the next 10 years. Nobody's talking about it because of, again, what they heard 20 or 30 years ago, Pablo Escobar, which is no longer the case. So I'm looking at deals in Bogota, in the capital right now, which is going to add 1 million people to its ranks over the next decade for barely over $1,000 a meter in the middle of the city for property. I don't know what it is in Ireland right now. I'm sure in Dublin with your housing shortage, it's much, much, much higher than $1,000 a square meter, and no one's talking about it. Why? Because they go and look up Bogota real estate and they find some quack expat agency that sells it for twice that price or more because the website's in English. And they say, no, this offshore thing is terrible. There are so many emerging markets right now where the fundamentals are excellent that no one's talking about.
Yeah, but how does, I agree. As you say, it's put in English. It looks worse than it is. And people are not doing the research, or they're not aware because, I suppose it's having the inside knowledge.
Well, that's the reality. When I first came to Ireland in 2008, I remember thinking to myself at the time, interest rates in the banks were higher than they were in the U.S. And I said, why am I making these tiny interest rates? I can come to Ireland and make more. And so now, if you try to do that now, you can't open a bank account in Ireland as a non-resident in most cases. So that doesn't work. So you go back to the drawing board. And so, I think the challenging thing for this is that it's hard for people to just want to get the best result. Obviously, that's our service. We charge a fee for it. It's not cheap. But I think that, if you look at being able to buy property for 1/10 the price of some of the places in Europe, in places that are growing, that's very intriguing. And I think so many people get caught up in this internet research. If you want financial freedom, like you talk about, I think sometimes it's worth, especially in this stuff that's more up and coming, seeking some advice. And so, there's a lot of hidden gems out there. I'm constantly discovering them, and I've been doing this a long time, full time, and I constantly discover, maybe that's the next big place.
And, your company, right? If I come to you, how do you help me?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what's going on in your life that we want to address? What are the key deliverables? Start with the end in mind. I think it's a great tip for anything, 7 habits of highly effective people.
Yeah.
Andrew, listen, I'm tired of paying taxes in Ireland. I'm making €500,000 a year. I'm giving almost half of it to the government. That's ridiculous. So then we're going to figure out, where's the offshore company going to be based on where your employees are, the product you sell, how much money you have to put in the bank, and a whole host of other factors. Maybe you want a second residence to make sure that Ireland lets you leave their tax system. We're going to figure out, okay, where do you want to live? Do you like warm? Do you like cold? Are you going to be nomadic? How many different home bases do you want? How much time do you want to spend in one place? Figure that out. Andrew, I also have, €500,000 sitting around. I'd like to invest. Right now it's sitting in the bank, or it's in Irish property that's, whatever. And we're going to say, okay, great. What's your risk tolerance? So there's a whole diagnostic process to figuring out what you want. What I know is this, if I can go out, if you can claim an Irish passport, okay, people who have Irish ancestry, you probably want to claim that. You don't really need too much help with that. But the big holistic picture of how it all works and how you get it up taxes here and don't have, that's what we do.
Yeah, I can tell by, just that little conversation there about, start with the end in mind. I love that. It's very powerful. And, for offshore, like, what does it look like to you? Like, what's your risk tolerance? What's your business? Like, yeah, I can see, how you're looking at where the person is, where they want to go, and how, by being smart about it, you can put that in place very quickly.
I think the big missing piece in a lot of professional services and a lot of business services are two elements. Number one, human. Number two, holistic. The biggest thing that frustrated me, I've been running businesses since I was 19 years old, was that everyone always does their own little piece. And you've got to hire 16 different guys to figure out, not just in offshore, but in many things. You have to hire this kind of lawyer and that kind of lawyer. It becomes really frustrating.
Yeah.
And I want someone to manage it. The other thing is there's the human piece. People go, they hear offshore, and they say, hey, Big Four, can you help me? And the Big Four helps them, but there's no human focus. It's not like, well, do you want to do this? Or are you willing to do this? Will your wife like this? And then they get this tax plan that works very well as a tax plan, but it doesn't really serve their needs as a human being. They're not going to do that. Move to the Isle of Man. I hate the Isle of Man. Well, I'm not doing that then, if that's my thing. So it has to be human. You have to analyze and be totally self-aware. What am I willing to do?
Yeah. And, when you're talking about the human thing, I know if I was put in a certain country just because of taxes and I hated it, I would be miserable.
Well, so again, this is where I go back to the conditioning is I had a great gift. When I was 12 years old, my father told me about it's our trademark, right? Go where you're treated best. He said, Andrew, don't think you have to stay here. Because he saw the shifting sands coming. He said, if you're going to be in business, which I just 12 years old, I said, I want to be in business. He said, if you're going to be in business, you owe it to yourself to go where you're treated best because, in 2056, who knows if the United States will be the best place? It probably won't, he said. And so I got that permission slip my wife didn't get that permission slip. Most people I know didn't get that permission slip.
No.
And so they're like, oh, I can't go anywhere. And so it only makes it worse to be like, well, your only option is Dubai. I hate Dubai. I hate the heat. Well, that's all you have. Well, then you're just going to sit there and pay it. I hate to see people, Lorna. I hate to see someone who's 30 years old, who's got 30 good years ahead of them. They're going to lose $10 million because someone told them you've got to go to Dubai or else nothing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And now that I'm newly married and talking about family, $10 million, it's one thing for those to be numbers, but what do those numbers mean to you? That we're talking generational wealth. The difference between making €500,000 in Ireland with a high cost of living, with high taxes, you're not saving a lot of money, and the difference between doing it living the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle where you're living in somewhere that's a bit cheaper, a bit warmer. For me, it's Kuala Lumpur, it's Montenegro, it's Mexico, paying very small taxes, taking control. We're literally talking millions, if not tens of millions of dollars that you can use to contribute, to give back. For me, it's charities, Cambodia, Armenia, India, other places. Contribute to your future children. Build a legacy. The numbers have meaning.
Yeah. When you were talking there about giving back and, creating a legacy, I think that's a big desire for a lot of people. In fact, probably everybody. But we don't always. And, it's amazing that you got the message at 12 years of age, go where you're treated best. That's huge.
Yeah, what's funny is someone wrote an article and they said, Andrew seems like he knows what he's talking about, but I had to go over the trust fundy vibe. No. The trust fund was being given financial literacy, being taught how business works, being taught the golden rule, because that's how my father ran his business, and being given this permission slip. That's it. I got $0, but with that knowledge, that very powerful knowledge, and with that empowerment, It's turned into a number of businesses and now Nomad Capitalist. And I think that you're right. It's not all about money. Money helps us, inspire other people and contribute and do a lot of good in the world. It also helps us build our businesses bigger and get our message out stronger. And I think a lot of people are looking for that, but they get stuck.
Yeah.
So,
Andrew, we've had an amazing conversation. For anyone listening to us today, they really want to do something about where they're at, and they're in a good place financially, and they need your help to do it right and to be offshore and make the most of their investments. What would you say to them?
Well, again, I think self-awareness is very important. Ask yourself what's important. I did write a book. I spent about 2 years writing a book called Nomad Capitalist. And I think that's probably the best entry point for folks because it tells the stories. It gives some perspective things. And I walk through all the different steps, from asset protection to lower taxes to offshore banking. You don't have to do all of the steps, right? I mean, you don't have to go full throttle as I have and throw your passport in the trash and move all your money offshore and do all of that. I do this as the person who is trying to understand this at a deep level. If all you want to do is open a bank account, that's cool. So read the book. It's called Nomad Capitalist. And I think you'll get a perspective for what really works. The most successful people I help, they started with the book because they got an idea for, I can't just open a bank account in Singapore and not pay taxes while I live in Ireland. No, not generally. No, you can't do that. So read the book. And after that, if you're interested, then you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can apply to work with us. We've got over 1,500 blogs. We've got over 500 videos on YouTube. So we've got a lot of content. I would start with the content. I'd start with the book as an aggregation of that content and see, what's really possible and what you'd be willing to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. And where can we get your book?
It's on Amazon, Nomad Capitalist, and
we'll share the link in the notes as well. Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. This has been amazing, and thank you for sharing.
It's my pleasure. Great to be on your show.
Hey, everyone. Remember to join us in the Private Financial Freedom Podcast Facebook group with me, your host, Lorna Poole. This is a safe haven of like-minded wealth-getting go-getters who, like you, are on their journey to creating financial freedom in their life. This is where you and I can get intimate. I can give you the support and guidance to go from where you are now to where you want to be, developing your wealth mindset and creating your financial freedom life. Join at www.facebook.com/groups The Financial Freedom Podcast. You will see the links to this on the website. It's in the show notes, or type it into the Facebook group. All you have to type in is Financial Freedom Podcast and you will see us there. Look forward to seeing you in the group. Take care. Thank you for joining us on the Financial Freedom Podcast to creating wealth, investing, and developing your money mindset. To get started today on your journey, head on over to www.lornapoole.com and grab your free course, 5 Steps to Breaking Free from Your Poverty Mindset and Accelerating Your Journey to Financial Freedom. See you there.